we're in for a treat. And as Jenny said, I'm the director of artistic planning here. I know many of you, most of you, who are here on the Zoom screen, and we're about to hear from one of the shining stars in our field right now, Andrew Owsley, whom I've had a pleasure of knowing uh, over a good amount of time. He presented at our in-person event in New York City last year, Champions of Chamber, and that is what Andrew is. He is a champion of chamber music. He's also Unison Media and Death of Classical. So anyway, you all probably know who he is. So I'll just at this point let it. I'm just going to have him take it away. But just prior to that, I want to alert everybody that this is being taped. Taped? Is that the right word? Uh, this is being recorded, this Zoom session. And if you have questions, please do put them in the chat. Andrew is going to make a presentation and then sort of survey the questions later on, just those that are pertinent to the presentation and those that are more broadly stated so that they're helpful to everybody. So in the interim, please do mute yourself if you could. And I'm happy to have Andrew Owsley take it away. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Fantastic. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Jenny. And thanks all of you guys for being here. So many familiar faces and names. So what we're going to talk about today is, broadly speaking, social media and content. But I think to me, I want to kind of recontextualize and recalibrate a bit of how you all think about social media. Because what I find often happens is artists kind of start, our institutions as well, really start at the end of social media and start thinking, how often should I post? What platforms should I post on? When really those to me are kind of the last things to consider. And I think, as with all aspects of publicity, of social media, anything that's related to your public facing presence and profile, it has to first begin with your story. And this is an area where people talk a lot about just, oh, you have to figure out what makes you unique and talk about that, figure out how to differentiate yourself. And that's a very easy thing to say, but it's a very hard thing to do. And so what I want to talk about, given this is something that I do quite a lot with the artists that we do PR for in my various workshops and consulting work, I want to actually do a sort of very mini workshop here to show that process of defining and differentiating a brand, a story. And I use the term branding and storytelling and narrative kind of interchangeably, because for me, we're not trying to create McDonald's here. This is about individual artists or institutions or ensembles, what differentiates them from the many other similar, on paper, similar people or institutions or ensembles. So really understanding that, because only when you know what of your story is most compelling and important and gets the biggest response from people, that's when you can start to assess content. And then with social media, how you tell that story and build a community around it on social media platforms. To me, the most important thing, other than having that content tell your story compellingly, is, do people respond to it? And understanding how to analyze and optimize and ruthlessly focus your content on what gets a response is, to me, the most important aspect of using social media as a professional, as a practitioner, rather than a consumer of social media. And so what I want to do is actually, again, take some time to do that in real time with you guys. We'll pick one of you will be another guinea pig, and we'll go through a social media account and actually analyze it together. And then lastly, I want to talk just briefly about the intersection of social media and traditional media or press. And because oftentimes people conflate traditional media and social media, and they think like all social media is everything and just that's my public presence. And the issue with social media is that unless you're trying to become an influencer and you really build a huge following, social media is not self-validating. It does not externally validate you to the industry. It simply builds a community that allows you to reinforce your storytelling to it. But traditional press is what still at this point validates you externally as an artist, a noteworthy artist. And so how you share that on socials is important, but it's also important to understand what those two things do and do not do for you. As Susan noted, if you guys have questions at any point as we're going through this, then just throw them in the chat and take a look before you share one to see if somebody else has already asked it. And then again, when at a couple of points, I'll just pause and maybe look and see if there are any questions that are worth addressing in the moment. Otherwise, we'll leave plenty of time at the end to really dig into Q&A. So first, what I want to talk about is branding and storytelling and how you define your story. And again, the general advice here is branding is how do you define and refine your narrative and what makes you unique. But in reality, what that actually comes down to is finding a sweet spot of what are 3, 4, 5 specific, discrete aspects of your story that you can distill and focus. And then how can you use those to tell your story compellingly, but also very concisely? Because usually when an artist is asked, tell me about yourself, there are one of two answers that I find. The first is they say, I'm a pianist or I'm a musician. And the response to that is, cool, like there's a lot of those out there. So what makes you different? And then the other end of that spectrum is a 15-minute sort of life overview. Like, well, in 1984, my parents went to the hospital and gave birth to a shining child. That was me. My early days where I liked pudding as a child. Like, and then it's, a long story about who you are, most of which is neither relevant nor interesting to your public-facing profile as an artist. And so what the process is that I'm just going to show you a little bit of is how you take the totality of yourself as a human being, as a complex, multifaceted person and artist, and again, ruthlessly whittle it down to a handful of points that are compelling, that reinforce one another, and that tell a three-dimensional narrative of who you are. Not just what you're about musically, but also why. What are your values? What are the aspects of your life, the points of your life that have the experiences that have shaped you, that have formed those values, those personal values, those musical and artistic values. And so what that can do is in a minute, in 90 seconds, you can give a clear and powerful representation of yourself that is compelling, but that also feels organic, but also three-dimensional, and that is somebody that describes somebody that is only you. Because again, if you say you're a violinist, cool, that doesn't differentiate you in any way. If you say I'm a violinist who specializes in contemporary works, all right, we're getting a little more narrow, but like still a long way to go. Whereas if you say I'm a violinist and I used to focus exclusively on Baroque music, but then I experienced a piece, by X composer that completely just shattered my world and made me realize how the most important stories that I wanted to tell were the ones of our time and to try to speak to what we are currently going through. And so I've shifted my focus to purely do contemporary music that I feel speaks to what is most urgently relevant about society. Now, I just made that up because I'm neither a violinist nor a contemporary music specialist, but that is a brief encapsulation of the who, the what, and the why that would differentiate me if any of those things were true, which none of them are. So what I'd like to do is ask that one of you be a guinea pig, and that we will take, this is something I normally do over an hour and a half workshop with artists and clients of ours, but we're going to take about 5 to 10 minutes. So we're going to do a very condensed version of this. But I find that watching the process unfold makes it much more realistic and clear how you actually can do this yourselves and what the actual goals are. So who's feeling brave this afternoon? Raise a hand. Don't all raise your hands at once. It's impossible to choose. Amy, I saw you first. Susan or Jenny, can you guys like spotlight the two of us so that we can have a little more focus? I think if you right click on us, do the more on the participants, you should be able to find the add spotlight for me and Amy. Gabitas, how do you pronounce your last name, Amy?
It's Gabadis.
Gabadis, great. And then if you do that for me as well, then we should have Amy and Andrew on the screen. Fantastic. Here we are. Nice to meet you. So tell me about yourself.
My name is Amy Gabadis. I'm a clarinetist with the quintet Aspen Winds. And we are made up of musicians from all over the state of Utah. We're very active freelancers, but we get together and play chamber music. And right now, our big project is trying to do a summer chamber music workshop. So we're trying to attract audience or members for that.
Okay. So we'll sort of pivot this over to an ensemble, right? Since this is really more about the Aspen Winds Quintet, and how do you differentiate yourself from the other wind quintets roving around the Badlands. So you gave me that you guys are active freelancers from all over the state of Utah, and that you're trying to do a summer workshop. So that differentiates you, certainly, but not in a way that's necessarily super compelling. You are, and so what I want to know more is aspects of your story that will grab people, that people can hold on to, because a powerful narrative is one that people remember and regurgitate, restate to other people. And again, if the end goal of all publicity and promotion is to get two people who don't know you, who don't know each other, to say the same thing about you to one another without you in the room or any representatives in the room, that is when you have succeeded in building a true brand and a true public profile. When you have awareness and consensus beyond yourself, then in order to do that, you have to become very, very confident and skilled at telling your story. And that's true for all artists. And it's also something that is deeply unnatural to most people, but especially to artists. So, but the example I want to focus on now is how to make people care and feel truly involved in the Aspen Winds Quintet. So there's a sort of general procedure that I usually follow in these sessions, but for now, I'm just going to ask, how did you guys form?
How did we what? Sorry, I missed the
How did you guys form? How did you come together?
We formed, it was a friend and I started playing duets and realized that we really wanted to start doing this more professionally. And then we both joined a local orchestra, met a horn player, and from there grabbed more players, a flute and a bassoon player to make the quintet.
Why a quintet?
Why a quintet? Because we love the music from that genre in particular.
What specifically? Any type particularly, or?
We focus on contemporary, and I like to say pretty contemporary. So we love working with living composers. We've been able to work with some local composers, but also like we've played Miss Lanka. We also, I'm blanking on the name right now, Amanda Harburg. We were able to play her quintet at the International Clarinet Association. And composers send us music all the time to read and decide if we want to perform it.
Cool. I'm going to pause for a second. So this is something that is core to your musical values, and it should be something that you state in your story, that you are focused on contemporary music and working with living composers. Since again, that differentiates you from wind quintets that only play core canon repertoire or traditional works. Branding, how and specifically the verbiage, how the words you use when telling your story are very, very, very important. And pretty contemporary music is a word that if you say it is important to specify, right? Because part of your story is also to be compelling to the people who are most important to your success as an ensemble. And so that when you then get your music in front of those people, they're interested in your story, they then come to hear you or listen to a recording. You want them to be like, okay, I like that. That's exactly what I thought it would be, and I am interested in it. So especially when it comes to contemporary music, giving an indication of the type of contemporary music is very, very important because there is a huge swath. And if you say, we focus on boundary pushing, avant-garde, challenging, complex music, contemporary music, that is going to appeal to a specific type of listener, of fan, potential fan or sort of advocate. It's also not going to appeal to a specific, another very different part. And if you say pretty, then that's going to appeal, but the word pretty has a value connotation. And so in that case, you are sort of saying, well, if people shouting at their instruments, and sort of playing them, beating their heads with them for 2 hours, that is avant-garde and thus not pretty. And that becomes then a value judgment, which can actively turn off the people who like more avant-garde music, some of whom might actually become fans of you guys, but not if they feel like you are kind of actively casting a value judgment, negative judgment against their type of music. So if you say more, for instance, more emotional or more, directly communicative music, accessible again starts to get a little bit tenuous, but finding words that speak to what you actually like about that music, not just like it's pretty, but like this is music that we play music that really hits us deeply and personally, and that we feel a connection to, but also that we feel we can play in a way that will reach a broad audience and make them feel the same thing that we're feeling. That whatever that statement is that you make about why you choose this music to focus on, that should make very clear to anybody who hears it that is different from somebody who likes to dive into the profound technical complexity of contemporary music and how you can push the boundaries of what sound is, of what sound experience, of what audience and performer connection can be. That then, without again being value focused, evinces a very different experience of what somebody will get hearing your music. Does that make sense? That's sort of how you word that. And so again, that's why the why is also important, of like, why do you like this music? And because that then gives a clear picture, and it also personalizes why you perform that type of contemporary music. Why don't we actually dive into that? What is your goal sort of musically? What is the impact you want to have?
We've thought about this a lot. We like to create experiences that entire families can enjoy. A lot of our audience are families. So we've done a lot with storytelling. We'll wear costumes and act out stories. We've commissioned new works that tell stories, and sometimes we'll pair that with music. We've also just started doing silent films and scoring music to go with the silent films. So we like to have it be more than just music, but we've learned that it's really rewarding for us when we can get an audience excited about all new music. Like I live in a small town, and so occasionally we get to perform there. I remember we did a performance with Liggity and Miss Blanca and some other contemporary performers, and I would get stopped in the street later, like the next week, people saying, "Oh, I really loved that." which is funny because sometimes people think, oh, classical, we can only listen to Mozart or Beethoven. And so it just brings a lot of joy when people really, really appreciate this newer music and get excited to hear new stuff.
I'm going to stop you. I can't see everybody right now, but I hope that everybody felt the difference between what you just said versus what you said when I first asked you the question. Those are two very different responses to the same question. And that is what you want to lean into. Not, that we're made up of musicians from over the state of Utah and we're active freelancers when we come together, but we want to create experiences that will appeal to people of all ages. What is important to us is the storytelling, the power of storytelling that is inherent in music, especially contemporary music and the stories of our time, and how these stories can be told through multimedia experiences that will appeal to all generations. That obviously, we would work much more to refine that to something that is really tight and really powerful. But this is the crux of your narrative. This is what begins to differentiate you, because there's a lot of wind quintets out there. There's probably quite a few in Utah, but how many of them have based their centralized their focus on this idea of, we want to take contemporary storytelling and make it as broadly accessible as possible, so that we get people coming up to us in the street the next day and saying, oh man, that Ligeti was incredible. That now paints a much more compelling and clear picture of what you guys are about. And what is important to note with storytelling is you have to make decisions, and those decisions will make you uninteresting to people, to other people. And so now, Amy, when you tell that story, you have an entire swath of the concert going world that will say, that doesn't really interest me. I'm not really interested in family fare. I want the guy screaming at the clarinet for 2 hours and like making me feel super uncomfortable, because that's what moves me. Or like, I want the math music that's just so technically insane, it just blows my mind. Not better, not worse, but very different. And the fact that you are going to not appeal to those people by telling that focused story is fine. And you guys, it's important to make peace with that, because those people are not going to, they're not going to be your biggest supporters. The people who hear that story and say, I want to bring my kids and listen to some Ligeti, that sounds awesome, and I want to have puppets and a film, they will come because you have told them a story that resonates with them, and they will enjoy it, and they will most likely come back, as long as you do your jobs on the stage, which obviously you will. And so that cutting away of audience members, of potential people, that is an important process in focusing on the people who are most likely going to truly care about your story. Because again, it is that awareness, but it is also that consensus and that interest, that belief. You are trying to build a true community of people who care about what you are doing and are interested in it. Does that make sense? That difference between how you responded at the start of this and how in an ideal world you would respond with, again, the same amount of time, but something that is much more focused, much more clear, and where you feel the importance of that story as you tell it, which I felt very clearly when you answered that last question.
Yes, that definitely makes sense.
Cool. We've got a bit of time. I would love to do another guinea pig if there's anybody else who might be interested.
I will.
Fantastic. I didn't see who that was, but Susan, can you bring him up on the spotlight?
Oh, hello, whoever that was. I can't.
It's Terry Boyarsky from Duo Balalaika.
Oh, there you are. Okay, let me find you in this. Where are you, Terry? I think I have to
Duo Balalaika is the user account.
Okay, Duo Balalaika. How do I do that in the?
If you go to them on the participants and you hit more, and then you just hit add
Oh,
spotlight.
okay. I was looking at it for in the whole thing. Okay, Duo Balalaika. Where are you?
You can search
There
it.
you are. Okay. Got it. Okay, there you are, Terry. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you the same question, Terry. Tell me about yourself. You got 60 seconds. Go.
Okay, we are Duo Balalaika. We are a balalaika virtuoso from Siberia and concert pianist from America. We play an interesting repertoire, originally for balalaika piano duo, but we also now play tangos and ragtimes, which we arrange for ourselves, and a bit of classical music. And
Okay.
we have education outreach.
And do education. Okay, so cool, an info dump, but a good one. Again, and you like if we did 10 of these, they'd get better and better as we go along, because the more that you guys see other people do this, the more it becomes clear how you talk about yourself. So obviously you have an immediate differentiation, right? Which is while there are wind quintets out there, there are fewer balalaika focused duos. So
We are the only balalaika piano duo professionally touring in North America.
All right. So
And that's on our website.
When you are telling your story, you want to, if you have things about you that are objectively unique or objectively sort of validating or sort of newsworthy or compelling, don't bury that lead. When somebody asks you what you're about, you say, we're actually the only balalaika, professional balalaika duo in North America. Like that immediately differentiates you and is like, okay, I don't know what a balalaika is, but I'm interested. So, however, you do have to explain what a balalaika is. So that, and to do that, you have to do so in a way that makes me actually want to hear one. So, what's a balalaika?
It's a triangular, three-stringed member of the Asian lute family. So it has frets, a neck, and it has many, many techniques. Some peculiar to the balalaika, and some are like guitar. Some are the way of making vibrato is quite unique. No other instrument does that. And it has an octave range of two octaves, so that the quality and timbre make the interest, because there's so many varieties of sound that can come out of this little instrument.
Okay, I'm going to stop you for a minute. I'm just taking a few notes as well. So you bury the lead again. Most people are not going to care about the unique vibrato to start with. And if you tell me you should come hear this instrument because, oof, really interesting vibrato, that's not going to get me to the concert hall. So what I want to focus on is when you say, we're a balalaika duo, the balalaika, we focus on the balalaika because then this is where I want you to be able to then say something that will hook the broadest audience. People who are like experts in stringed instruments and who know all the different types of vibrato, they're going to be interested. But that's a tiny subset of the population. Right. And if you focus on them, then the vast, endless seas of humanity that don't care objectively about vibrato, you're going to start to lose them. It's the same thing if you're a singer and you say, I really love focusing on the tessitura of a certain role. You're immediately losing the people who don't know what that means. So you said at the very end, the varieties of sound. First of all, where is the balalaika from?
Russia.
Got it. I figured.
It's peculiarly Russia, but we play world music. So everything we play, classical, Brazilian, tango, movie music, is through the lens of the balalaika piano duo.
Got it. And so you talked about the variety of sound, like the timbre, like make me care, make me feel emotionally about that. Why do you, I mean, you
okay, so
are the only balalaika duo, so you must care about it. So
yeah.
Same thing as Amy before. Speak to me about what makes you felt enough to be like, I want to be the only North American balalaika piano duo.
So this music can make you dance and it can make you cry. It can make you feel very deeply, and it can make you feel so joyous. Part of it is the music and part of it is the way we play it.
But now you're getting to it. So that what I want to hear is when you say we're the only professional balalaika duo in North America, and we focused on this instrument because this Russian instrument, because it can make you dance, it can make you cry, you can feel sorrow and joy. It contains the multitudes of the human experience in this 3-stringed lute. That now I want to hear a balalaika. I'm interested in the vibrato, but that's going to be a lot more interesting to get me in there, and then you can sell me on vibrato once I'm in my seat. But does that make sense, that idea of like burying the lead, burying what is most compelling about your story and what is most broadly interesting by focusing first on the most narrow details? So that's what you want to always tailor your story to be only what is most broadly compelling, while still narrowing down, like differentiating what makes you interested. There may well be a balalaika duo where they speak with the same level of passion purely about the technique, and they're like, all we care about is showing the virtuoso, like the sounds of this instrument. And again, there is a subset of humanity, it's small, but there's a subset that are going to be like, I'm interested in balalaika technique. These are my guys. And you and them might have a healthy competition, but you can still differentiate the balalaika community, you being more emotional and sort of like energy focused, and them being more pure technique focused. Not better, not worse, but different. So that, I think, is again where you shift your emphasis, and you spoke much more passionately about dancing and crying and sorrow and joy than about the 2-octave range. So again, that's where I want to where I think it's important to shift focus on storytelling. Does that make sense? Thank you, Terry. Cool. Okay, now I want to focus on, and you can, I think, either on Spotlight Susan or on Spotlight both of us, however you want to do it. Actually, keep me spotlighted because we're gonna have more guinea pigs. Now I want, so defining your story and becoming very confident telling that in a way that people respond to, that is the most important thing you can do before anything else. Because if you do not know how to tell your story, then other people will define it for you, or more likely, no one will define it, and you will simply throw chance to the wind of how people think about you and talk about you. Whereas the more that you refine and define and tell your story compellingly, the more you will influence others to echo that narrative to the people in their communities and talk about you in a focused way and create both awareness and consensus, which again is the ultimate goal here. So social media, once you understand how to talk about yourself, then you can look at social media. And again, what is most important about the content of social media is, first and foremost, what does it say about you? Does it reflect your story in a compelling way, in an authentic way? Is it true to who you are? So that is first and foremost. And what I make all of my new staff members do, and what I tell everybody in every seminar I've ever given about social media, is the most important thing that you can do for social media to improve your approach to it is set aside at least 2 hours. Get whatever your painkiller of choice is, whether it be green tea or scotch, whatever gets you through the tough periods, because it's not going to be easy. And then go down the dark rabbit hole of social media for 2 hours at least. And the way to do it, and you want to do it with the mindset of a professional, of a practitioner, not a consumer. So you're not focused simply on what are the most adorable cat photos, or what are the memes that make me lol the hardest. You want to be focusing on people who do what you do, people who you think like at a higher level, who you think are your heroes, people at a contemporary level who you think are your people who you compare yourself to, people who you think do a terrible job. You want to look at all of these, and you want to go deep down the rabbit hole of their social media accounts. I usually start with Instagram since it's the most mature platform at this point with the highest engagement compared to like a Facebook or an X. And it's easiest to kind of quickly analyze, which I'll show you in a minute. But you want to really, and you don't want to just look at their top 3 or 5 posts. You want to go way, way back and see what changes over time, but also what do you respond to? And is that response positive or is it negative? And are there interesting ideas about content? Are there content that you could see yourself doing? If content resonates with you, it will resonate with your following, the people, the community you're trying to build around yourself. And so what that extremely painful for many people 2-hour process will do is it will massively calibrate your internal barometer for social media. What do you think is great content? What do you think is cringe content, which is equally important because the most damage on social media comes not from being boring, but being actively off-putting. Cringe content. If you make people cringe, you will create great difficulty for yourself. I've had people who I've represented from a PR standpoint where I've spoken to like the editor of a major magazine who says, yeah, no, he's a great singer, but I'll never cover him because his Instagram just makes me cringe. That just makes me feel awkward. And otherwise a great guy, great personality, great singer, terrible at managing his Instagram. And has like created a ceiling over himself that otherwise would not have been there through bad posting, bad content, and a bad instinct about content. So calibrating yourself for the negative, but also again, for content ideas. And you want to be looking at multiple people because you want to see how different accounts try to do the same thing. So how do they promote their concerts? How do they share press hits that successes in the press? How do they announce big moments compellingly? How do they share about an album, say, or recording or what? And so different people will do those in different ways, season announcements and so on. So you want to get an understanding of what resonates with you and also what works. And we're going to take a few minutes to sort of analyze and optimize some poor, sweet guinea pig's Instagram account. Raise your hand. Who wants to do this? Who wants to put their Instagram in front of the collective team? Assuming I can screen share, which I think I can.
I'll do it.
Who's that? Who said yes?
Annie.
I forgot there's a CMA event happening right now. I just dialed in.
Sorry, can we get that spotlight? That was Annie. You said that was you?
Yep, that's me.
All right, you're jumping in. All right, can we get Annie on the spotlight? Let me pull up your Instagram. Which one do you want me to look at, Annie, by the way, while we get you up there?
Let's do the black box one.
All right. What's the handle? Black Box New Music.
At Black Box New Music.
Fantastic. Okay, so I am going to share my screen. And here we have Black Box New Music. Okay, so what you want to do when you do this analysis and optimization is that I start sort of first at the highest level of just what is the handle, what is the name of the account, what is the biography, and then technically what have they done with shared story highlights and their links. So first off, you've got a nice logo. That's cool. You've got Black Box New Music, Black Box Ensemble. Cool. Those resonate. You've got new music here. You've got no new music here. You might say Black Box New Music Ensemble to be more searchable, but that's sort of that's a minimal point. NYC-based contemporary music ensemble performing music of and for our time. Cool. So that's a mission statement. It tells me what I'm going to get and also what some of your value and your priorities of and for our time. So that's great. This is also an opportunity to like put some personality in, usually sometimes through emojis or a bit of humor. Not necessarily, but if humor is a part of your brand or sort of personality is a part of your brand, then it's important to put something in there that makes me think, okay, they've got some character. They're not too serious. you've got your website, you've got upcoming events, and you've got to donate. Great. And another easy way to do this is through a link tree. There's a million of these, like link in bio and things like that. Linktree has the best customizability at the free level that I find. So that allows for one single link that then pulls up, and you can always easily update it, break it out into segments, and so on and so forth. It also like embeds video. So that's something that I often suggest if you have multiple links, because it allows you to really have a very clear, centralized place to send people, so they don't have to then navigate all these links. So then you've got Save Story Highlights. I usually tend to treat Save Story Highlights as same way that I treat sort of tabs on a website, which is evergreen kind of content that emphasizes specific aspects of what you do. And so, for instance, if you're a contemporary music ensemble, have one for composers and be like just photos of you guys hanging with composers, reinforcing your credibility with, you know, some of the composers you work with, and just like some character, like fun with you guys. Like in performance or in concert, if you have, or like video or process, if you want to talk about, like, do videos about how you guys approach premiering a new work. So again, this is where you can sort of start to tell some aspects of your story in concentrated visual form with stories and with photos and videos. And what we usually do with artists when we're sort of creating these is we'll like create them first, create graphics for them. So like in Canva, that's the easiest way to do it, so that there's a visual consistency. And then you've just got to take one day and just like share a bunch of things to stories and categorize them all, or go through your story archives and sort of categorize those. That's a little less invasive, but except the fact that there'll be one day when you have a gajillion stories, and then 24 hours later, everybody will move on, and you'll have a beautifully orchestrated set of Save Story Highlights. The advantage of that as well is that you don't have to worry about constantly updating them. So again, we have here the 22-23 season. It's 2025. So you look at that and somebody might be like, okay, well, I guess they stopped after 23. And so again, the way having Save Story Highlights means that you don't have to necessarily like keep updating them. So for instance, I'll just give a quick example from our work, like for like Gustavo Dudamel, where we have, these are like Hollywood Bowl, Yola, LA Phil recordings, etc. And so we don't have to update these constantly because they're kind of evergreen content. So that's another reason why we do that, but also it just creates a very polished look. So now to the content. That's sort of something I do as a general audit, but the content itself. So first of all, you look at the following: 1,500 followers, following 600. So that's a good ratio. If somebody has 1,000 followers and follows 50,000 people, that immediately creates an impression of like, this person is going out and following everybody, and doesn't have an organic growth or interest in them. So you always want to be careful of your following to follower ratio. So that's one thing to just keep in mind. But what I will do is exactly what I'm doing now, which is just hovering over posts and seeing what is the average. So 1,500, 40, 20, 80. What is the sort of average number of likes? And then what are the outliers, both poor performing and high performing? And so we're already seeing, for instance, a couple of 100 there and that 80. And then we're seeing some lower ones. This one's a higher one. And so just getting a general sense of what is the average baseline and what does better and what does worse. So immediate observations. There's a lot of text. There's a lot of promotional text content. Generally speaking, that does worse because people don't go on Instagram to read. They go on Instagram to sort of be entertained and consume like content that makes them feel closer to the brand that they are pursuing. That's obviously not true if you're like an informational account or like a meme account, but again, you're not trying to be a meme account as far as I know. So then you want to look at what gets a good response. So 100, 80. So what are the similarities here? Oh, they're photos of you guys. that makes sense. That makes us connect to you guys on a personal level. And so that's something to keep in mind, that those kinds of group selfies do better. Then this one, again, I always also look to collaboration. And so you're collaborating with Bang on a Can. Makes sense why that would do better. Bang on a Can has its own following. So that's something that tactically, again, all of you want to always be thinking, who can you collab with? But also, when you collaborate with somebody who has a bigger following, you lose leverage. And if you let somebody else define the content and the copy on your account, then that might not be the best representation of you compared to if you did it yourself, if it was more personalized or in your voice. However, if they have 1 million followers, you can compromise. So that's sort of a negotiation that you have to do in the moment of seeing, like, how important is it for me to be collaborative with this account versus how good is this content? Is this the best content? No. If it was a video of you guys playing whatever you're rehearsing, whatever you're playing for long play, that would probably perform better and would maximize the impact of this collaboration. But and it would also represent you well on your feed and their feed. So that's also why, again, to me, after you have defined your story, the next question is, what is the content that we can create consistently that performs well on our account, that overperforms? And then that's what you want to absolutely focus on, and being relentless with that, and trying to then continue to refine and optimize your approach there. Here's another photo of you guys, another 100. So again, it's so starting to think about that. But also, if all your account is just selfies of you guys, people will get bored of that too. So again, then it's thinking, what can we create? So when we rehearse, can we put a phone up on a music stand and capture ourselves rehearsing something? Or, if a big part of our collaboration is, post-concert meals or something like that, can we capture some of those? Or what are aspects of like what we do? Like, Amy, what you were talking about with Aspen Wins, like I would love content that focuses on that experience that you create. And so again, here's something that, like, a video of you guys rehearsing overperforms. So that gives a clear sort of direction that you guys can try. And if you find content that consistently performs well and consistently overperforms, even if you keep sort of posting similar versions of it, that is the holy grail. And that's what we really try to find for our clients, is content that is easy to capture, consistently capturable, and consistently performs well, even if we share it, constantly share it. That is what is best. For, Gustavo, for instance, like, we found that footage of him in rehearsal and just, having fun with musicians and being his normal self in rehearsal performed 1,000 times, 1,000% better than the average content that we were doing. And that's pretty much what we focus on now going forward, is just as much rehearsal content as we can get, because we could do a post a day and it would still get 1 million views a post easy. And it's simple. So, and it tells his story and presents him well. So that's what you want to be trying to find. Promotional things, unless, again, you have a powerful collaborator, I generally put them to stories, because on the feed, they don't perform well and they quickly become irrelevant. After March 9th, nobody's going to be coming to this concert because it's in the past, unless they got a time machine. So that allows, stories is an inherently more ephemeral, whereas feed is inherently more narrative focused and sustainable, sort of like sustained narrative. So that's how you want to kind of differentiate there. So does that make sense to kind of, Annie, obviously to you, but sort of to everybody, that process, what I just did there? Because
Absolutely. So helpful.
that is how you optimize. And it's the same process for all of you, but it's, again, it's being very ruthless and let the numbers guide you, because what you think might be interesting content might not be. In the same way that oftentimes when I'm doing a branding workshop with somebody, they'll be like, this is a really interesting part of my personality, or yoga is really important to me. And it's like, cool, unless you're a world-class yogi, it's not interesting to most people. And so again, there are things that you think might do well on socials that don't. And if the numbers don't support it, then you should change your approach. If it is super important, I had a person I was consulting with who was a photographer, primarily a singer, but also a photographer, and they loved sharing their photography. It consistently was their worst performing content by a long shot. And so, but they were like, I still want to share it. Cool. In that case, share it maybe once a month, gigantic photo dump of like, here's May in photos, or share it to stories and have a saved story highlight. But find a way that does it without compromising the performance of your primary sort of feed. And that is important because the more content you post that does not perform well, the less that the draconian Zuckerberg algorithm will deprioritize you. Whereas the more compelling the content you share, the more they will say, we can make money off of this person. And they will then focus on that. So they will elevate your reach. And so that's why, again, this is important, not just from how you tell your story, but also how you maximize the impact of your public profile and your platforms. Cool. We are at 12:56. Thank you, Annie. Being the guinea pig. So we're at 12:56. I see a question from Augusta. If you guys have other questions, then I think, Jenny, Susan, we've got 15 minutes or 20 minutes? 20 minutes? How much more time?
We have 20 minutes.
Perfect. Okay. Then feel free to dump questions into the chat here. In the meantime, I will start with Augusta. All right. What if you have an account that is a mixture of professional posts and personal? Guilty as charged, lots of cat photos. First of all, even a professional account should feel personal. If the only things you post are, hey guys, come hear me, or like, oh, come listen to my album, guys, or I need you to do this for me, guys, or like, I need you to do that, you will not have a good following. If all you do is push content onto people without engaging and creating a personality around that account, whether you're a person or representing an institution or an ensemble, you will have a bad account. So there must be an aspect of personal. How personal is where it matters. And that's where that 2 hours of Scotch-fueled rabbit holing is very, very valuable. Because again, you will start to understand if somebody shares something, you're like, ooh, that's a little too much of them. I didn't need to see that. Then that creates a clear barometer for you, like a boundary that you should not go past in terms of how personal you share, how personal content gets for you. And so again, some people, their brand is hard on the sleeve and it's like, this is what I'm about and vulnerable, and I'm sharing that. That can be a great strength of a brand if that is important to them and to what they do as an artist. That can also, again, be weird if you are more generally a private, public-facing presence, and then you start being like, guys, I had a really tough breakup the other week. Oh man, it was tough. That can sort of create a whiplash, a cognitive dissonance amongst your following. It can also be a very powerful moment if it's handled well. But again, you want to be very intentional with how personal your content is. If it can be a great strength, if you have an adorable cat or a dog or hilarious pets, or again, you're like an amazing chef, or you love wine and you want to post every so often, like, here's my monthly wine post about this wine that I love and I wanted to share with you guys and share why I love it. That can be interesting. That can create, again, add three-dimensionality to you as a public figure, and it can also sort of reinforce elements of your artistic persona as well. If your whole thing is about having fun, and if you're like, here's me having fun with my cat, that reinforces that. Again, if you're a deeply serious, sort of edgy, intense person, and then every other post is like you lolling with your kitty, those are going to actually not reinforce one another. They're going to sort of detract from one another. So it's also understanding what reinforces your brand in a compelling way. Also, like, the head of artistic at Carnegie Hall never once said, well, this person is a horrible pianist, but oh man, do they have a cute cat. So let's hire him. Let's get him out here. So it's important to realize that you are a professional practitioner of social media as a public figure, but your career is not based on your adorable kitty or your utterly ripped six-pack. or your, chiseled jawbone, like those are not what gets you the gig. It is your validation as an artist that gets you the gig. 99.999% of the time. A jawbone helps. But again, it's that primarily people focus on you as a musician. So you should never let the personal sharing overwhelm or, again, detract from the professional. And that balance, how you strike that balance, varies from person to person. And it's important to, like, again, also get external opinions of that the more that you post. Because again, there are very high profile artists who have great careers who I wish would let me do a 15-minute social media consultation with them, because I would tell them, stop doing those things. And again, because people laugh at them behind their back, and that's horrible. And they're great artists and great people who are simply representing themselves poorly on social media, and it does damage. So it has to be a balance. But again, if you don't want it to be purely professional, because then people will never feel that personal connection to you and your narrative. And like what I was saying before with Amy and Terry, like people need to feel something. That is how you create a real connection and a fandom, a following that is invested in you versus like music, just music in general. Okay, I'm just going to take a look through. There's a lot of good questions coming in here. Platform. So Marianne, Facebook versus, I'm going to take 30 seconds on this, versus Instagram. Instagram is the most important platform by far for artists, for what we do. If you do one platform, do that. However, if there is another platform that you just love and you feel like you just get and you love posting on, focus on that one. Like if it's, for instance, there are people who hate Instagram but love Substack. They love writing long form newsletters and sending them out to people. Focus on that. If you love it, focus on it. TikTok, that's a hugely ascendant platform. It is easy to gain a massive following quickly because people are coming on it and people are highly engaged with it. That said, will it be around in 90 days? I don't know. And so there is a huge risk of building a gigantic TikTok following and then having the government shut it down, and then you're out of luck. So I always consider the lifespan, the predicted lifespan of a platform. And so I'm always very leery of new platforms. When they pop up, we get the handles for all of our clients immediately so that the handles are always consistent. And if it becomes a major platform, then great. Then we'll have it already, we'll have the handle. But otherwise, we don't really emphasize it or focus on it until we know that it comes to maturity. So like, for instance, all the Twitter killers, Mastodon, Blue Sky, Threads, lol, like we're on all those for our clients, but like we don't use most of them because it's not clear which, if any, are even going to really become a serious major platform. Threads had a huge influx at the start because it was, Instagram allowed you to easily convert. But now, when was the last time any of you were on Threads? There's a question. And again, platforms disappear wholesale. Vine, Clubhouse, these things just come and go. So you want to focus on what is most important. Facebook is the largest platform. It's also way over the hill, and it has a very limited engagement. It's very hard to grow your following on it if you are just starting out there. So, and if you have a personal account, and your personal account gets good engagement, then don't bother converting to a professional page. Just focus on your personal account. Post there the same things you post on other platforms and go with that. Converting to a professional page will massively degrade the organic reach of your account. So, but again, Instagram is the most important by far. All right, let's take a look.
Andrew, could you take a look at Christina's, because she's coming from a different perspective, if you don't mind.
I can indeed.
Christina.
Any suggestions for how to do this well when you are a presenter versus an artist or an ensemble? Many of our artists are touring and we only get them here for 1 to 2 days. We can get some great content from our local partners, but with a touring artist, sometimes all we have is their press photos and we often don't really get much access to them, the artists themselves. But we don't want to not talk about the performances and series. Absolutely. So obviously I consider this as well from my standpoint as a presenter with Death of Classical. So what you want to do when you're thinking about, obviously the highest level, first of all, is what differentiates your series. So what is the story you want to tell? Again, because if you say, I'm a presenting series of classical chamber music, cool, there's a lot of us out there. Still don't know what makes you different. So you need to, first of all, define that. And then all of your content should reinforce those narrative priorities and that storytelling and that sort of persona, the general persona, the voice and the personality of your brand. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, you want to see what is the best content of those artists. And so, for instance, if like you can easily take 2 minutes and scroll down an artist's Instagram, as I did with Annie's, and see what is the high performing content. I would usually start with videos and just go through the Reels tab of Instagram and see what has the most views and the most engagement. And if it's a good video, that's just usually it's like the most compelling video of that artist. If it is, reach out to the artist or the representative or the manager or the publicist and say, hey, this person's coming. We would love to just post this. Can we share this video? Do you own it? Or can you put us in touch with who does? And usually if you post it with a credit, it'll be fine. So that right there doesn't require the artist. It requires minimal research and communications. And it is content that will probably perform very well on your account because it performed well on their account. And so that's right there an easy thing. Secondly, if you are able to create something easily with the artist, then during like a rehearsal or a sound check and take 30 seconds to just get a clip of them doing something, that will do very well. Obviously, you then need the artist to sign off on that, approve the clip, and then, but if you can then do a collab with the artist, and I would defer to their voice because, you know, that whatever will get them to share it on their account, especially if they have a good following. That is generally a relatively pain-free way to get some content. And while, again, not every artist will be okay with that, some will be. You'd be surprised at how many are. And that will often perform very well. And it directly tells the story of your concert with them, your series. And if you do it early enough, might sell some tickets as well. But those are two immediate ways that you can sort of think about how to, with a minimum of work and engagement and requests from the artist. The other thing is, you know, doing shout out videos. That's starting to, I think, plateau at this point, but like just having an artist be like, hey, I'm coming and playing on X series, you know, can't wait to share this amazing Brahms music with you. Love Brahms. Here's a story about Brahms. Come check us out May 25th at 5 p.m. Artists will often do that whenever, you know, when they have time, or they'll do it in bulk and then send it out. And again, that allows you to share content that is unique. Often they will collab on it. And that, while it usually isn't the highest performing, unless they're hilarious or, you know, have a really big following, it tells the story. It's relatively innocuous to create, and it gets good performance. So that, and then obviously the content that you create, photos from the concerts after the fact, press that you get before and after. These are all things that you can share with, again, with minimal request from the artists to showcase the before, the during, and the after of a given concert, and tell the story of your unique series as well. Cool. I think we've got time for one more. Do hashtags make a big difference in engagement? No, they don't. Easy answer. Less and less used across the board. Okay, let's look at Ewo here. Ewo. Violin, classical accordion, Carolina, of course. I've observed that both on our Duo account and account in the personal account, the things that reach wider audiences are the classical hits of Vivaldi, Bach, video game music on a modern portative organ. Should we fear that some serious presenter might go to our profile, see those videos, and get the impression that you're not suited for varied classical recital, which you aim for? Interchange, yes. So this is an important general point to make, is the content that performs best on social media in general is usually not the content that best represents a classical chamber group or a chamber group of any side, any type, unless you are like a boy band or a girl band. And that is simply the nature of what people come to social media for en masse, the majority of social media followers. So again, if you've got ripped abs, then, and like taking your shirt off and playing violin will always do better in general. However, as with the storytelling branding we were talking about and the story points that you cut away, keeping the shirt on will engage fewer people, but probably will engage a more important group of people for your long-term career success. And being the shirtless violinist, you might get a lot of people come to your shows just to check out your abs, but like they're not going to be like, ooh, that is a nuanced interpretation of Stravinsky. That Venn diagram is smaller, the overlap there. So, and classical, like the serious sort of older guard of classical music will likely be actively repelled by that and will not take it seriously. So to your question, if you play more popular music, it will probably do better because it has a broader appeal. That's why it's popular music. However, again, unless you're getting hired to play popular music, and that is what your career is built upon, then you do need to mix it up. You can do both, but it is important, I think, to mix it up. And again, to focus, make sure that you're at least constantly putting an emphasis on what you are trying to build your career around. And making clear, for instance, in the copy that like this, when we do like the Interstellar soundtrack, that's just for fun. We're just, this is just sharing some fun music on Wednesday. We love this. But also like, you could even speak to like the like parallels you see between the Last of Us soundtrack and the Brahms Symphony No. 2 or something like that. You can make observations within that content that reinforces your musicianship so that people don't think you're just going for the lowest common denominator. But again, it's important to be intentional and aware. And that's why, again, the numbers are important, but that internal barometer of like what is good, authentic content that represents the narrative, which we know because we did the first part of branding, that should ultimately be the arbiter of whether or not you post something. Does it feel authentic, and do I feel energized rather than cringed by it? Trust your gut once you calibrate it. Cool. Yeah. Thank you, guys. I hope this was helpful and interesting, and hopefully you guys are going to go conquer social media now.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Andrew. We could have an Andrew Owsley marathon here, I'm sure. And so anyway, oh wow, we couldn't get to everybody's questions. Oh, but I think you zeroed in on some really good ones. So thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing your time with us and your insights and wisdom. It's just been terrific having you. So thank you.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, and great to see you guys and meet you guys, and see some old faces as well. And I look forward to seeing you guys out on the scene.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Take care, everybody. Bye.